So I got invited to go to New York City to talk on the Tamron Hall Show about homesteading. And so let's talk about the question today: is homesteading going mainstream? Full hat gangs heading to the Big Apple, baby. So the topic for the show that day was the millennial midlife crisis, and they brought me on to talk about why so many people are flocking to homesteading right now. And while I got to share a little bit of my story and how I came to start homesteading, what I want to do today is talk about what I didn't get to discuss on the show. What I really want to talk about today is why I believe homesteading to be so valuable and why I think so many people are flocking to it and finding a lot of fulfillment in it. And it's not that we've discovered something new or that we've cracked the code on peace in a crazy world. What I think it is that we've actually rediscovered a lot of traditions and things that we've done that have been lost for the sake of convenience, like growing your own food, raising animals, all of these things that are so fulfilling for so many different reasons. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Why is this so fulfilling, and why have we abandoned it for so long, and why are people coming back now? You know, a lot of the discussion on the show had to revolve around this idea of grandma and grandpa hobbies and how people in their 30s and 40s are rediscovering these old hobbies. And the thing that I think we're missing with that, and I've made a couple videos on this as well, so I'm not taking myself out of the picture here, but what I think we're missing is this idea that it's really not a hobby as much as it is a life skill that we've lost. Growing your own food, knitting, baking sourdough, all of these things hundreds of years ago were just ways that you ate, the ways you got clothes. Like, these were just, if you wanted those things, that's what you had to do. But we're lucky enough to live in a world where if you don't ever want to cook in a given day, you don't have to. Convenience has helped us so much where we can go get something prepackaged, we can go through a drive-thru, we can sit down at a restaurant. There's so many things that we can do that we can avoid these things if we want to, and so many people have, and I did for so long as well. And so this idea of growing your own food, raising your own food, gardening, baking sourdough, knitting, sewing, all of these things seem so foreign because it hasn't been a necessity. And so now we see it as a hobby because it still isn't a necessity. I don't have to do this to get my eggs right now. But what I'm discovering is that there's so much fulfillment that we've lost for so long because we abandoned this. And so what I think a lot of people are discovering these days is that raising animals, growing your own food, gardening, all of these different things are giving you fulfillment that you didn't realize you needed because you didn't have to do those things. It may be started as a hobby, but what it really is a life skill that you're rediscovering. And so when you ask yourself the question, is homesteading becoming mainstream? I think it is, but I don't think it's because it's a cool fad, because it can be disgusting at times. I think it's because when people try it, depending on whatever reason it is, it doesn't really matter what got you to try it, but once they do, they're finding a ton of fulfillment in it. And I think that's why you're starting to see it go mainstream. You see a lot of people from any sort of culture, color, and creed, whatever it is, find homesteading, start seeking out some self-sufficiency, and then just going full force into that rabbit trail and finding a ton of fulfillment in it. And that's why you see so many people curious. You see people escaping the cities, trying to find as much property as they can. And it kind of begs the question, well, what's so enticing about this? And it's because it's genuinely fulfilling. And I think the reason that recently it's becoming so popular is because a lot of people are realizing how attainable it actually is. For a long time, you thought if you want goats and chickens and pigs and farm animals and have a big garden and an orchard, you would need hundreds of acres. And obviously in the economy that we live in, no one can really afford that. But what you're realizing is that it's so much more accessible than people originally realized. You know, our operation here is on just a little over a half an acre, and you can do a lot of self-sufficient type things. You can do a lot of homesteading related things on not much property. And so, when you show up here, you would honestly leave a little underwhelmed about what's going on here. And I think that's the point, is that you would leave realizing oh, okay, this is attainable. Like, I can actually do this. And that's really the whole goal of all of this. And I think a lot of people are realizing too that homesteading doesn't require you to go fully off grid. It's not cookie cutter. It doesn't require you to move in the middle of the woods and not talk to anyone and be on solar and on water collection and have no access to the outside world. it really is what you want it to be. It's trying to pursue self-sufficiency in any way that you can in the situation that you're in. We're on the grid. We don't have a massive water collection system, but we are starting to provide our own food in certain ways. It's not a cookie cutter system, and a lot of people are realizing that you can still enjoy some of the spoils of the world. I take my family to Cracker Barrel all the time. I still like to drink Diet Coke. I don't do this as a doomsday prepper. Now, is there an aspect of, I have a little bit of comfort and a little bit of a cushion in case something bad does happen? Yes, but that's not like my reasoning for doing this is prepping or doomsday or anything like that. Now, I'm not faulting anyone that does do that. That's just not my MO with it. But what it is for me is just finding some old traditions in life that brought a lot of people fulfillment that just sort of have left the world. Not many people have a full-scale garden anymore. I want to be able to have certain things around my property that bring me fulfillment, allow me to raise up my kids in a way that I feel like is really cool, where they get to experience life with animals and have some responsibility out here. And I just think it's a really great way to live. And I think it's really accessible for a lot of people, and you can sort of make it whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be cookie cutter. You don't have to be off grid, and you also don't have to be in an apartment. You could, wherever you are, there's access to homesteading. And I think my favorite part of homesteading that a lot of people miss is the relationship aspect between you and your animals. I work hard for these animals. I make sure that they're fed, I make sure they're safe, I make sure they have water, proper amenities to live a happy and healthy life. These animals live better lives than most dogs and even some humans. But the thing is, they also work hard for me. It's a relationship. I work hard for them, they work hard for me. They provide a service, they have a purpose here. And I have a purpose here by taking care of them and being a provider for them, and it's a really amazing thing. Bluebell here, one of our goats, is about to give birth to a baby goat. And once she does that, we're going to start trying to milk her, but we're going to, we've taken care of her, we've bred her, we've been making sure that she's safe and healthy, and then she's going to provide something for us in return. And it's just an amazing relationship that you lose when you kind of go down the convenience route of, kind of separating your relationship with what food you're eating. You don't really know what's happening to a lot of the animals that you're consuming or a lot of the products that you're eating. You don't really know what happened, what the relationship was like. Were the animals happy? Were they even healthy? Really, none of those things are anything that you can recognize, but here you can, and I just really love that about homesteading. And I don't think too many people argue about the value of delayed gratification, but it really is so difficult to want to pursue a more delayed gratification when instant gratification is so accessible. With the ease of convenience, there's really not a ton of reason to want to pursue this delayed gratification. But take these fruit trees, for example. I planted these a little earlier this fall in September, and I'm not going to see actual fruit on any of these trees for potentially 2 or 3 years. But I'm excited about this because in 2 or 3 years, I'm going to have more fruit than I know what to do with, and I can't wait to take the first bite of that apple. And that's what so many people are finding in homesteading. When you get chicks, you get them as baby chicks, and you don't get eggs for up to 4 months. When we got Bluebell, she was just 6 months old, the goat who's now about to have a baby. We wanted to get these goats for the purposes of milking, but we got them as babies. We had to raise them until they were old enough to breed. Then we had to breed them, which is a 5-month process. And then we're going to want to wait until the baby weans a little bit before we start grabbing her milk. And so, this idea of, we're going to get a goat for the purposes of milking was like a 1.5 year, almost 2 year long process before it actually comes to fruition, which it still hasn't. And that's the beauty of homesteading, is it forces you to sort of avoid this idea of instant gratification and go more toward this delayed gratification, which I think is much more fulfilling. And so to answer the question, is homesteading becoming mainstream? I think the answer is yes, and I think it's for the right reasons. Convenience is still out there. You're not forced to do this, but so many people are still seeking to do this. And I think it's because they're looking for fulfillment. And homesteading can provide fulfillment, and so make sure that you subscribe to the channel so that you can learn all about homesteading. We only started this a little over a year ago, and so we're still learning as well. And what we want to do here at B&R Homestead is simply just show you what we're doing. Some things work great, some things are terrible, and we try to adjust as we go. But we really just want to be the guinea pigs for you so that when you start your homestead, you don't have to go through some of the obstacles that we did, because we went ahead and shared that burden for you. And so make sure you subscribe to the channel. Go to BNRHomestead.com, use code FOILHAT10 for 10% off, and we're going to see you next week.